Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. This is Tabletop Marketing 101. Appreciate everyone for coming. We have an amazing group here, extremely knowledgeable. We're going to leave some questions at the end for Q&A. So if there's anything in particular that you want to ask that's like burning a hole in your brain, think about it. Does it make sense for everybody in the room? If it does, come up to the mic at the end, ask it. And if it's more of an individual question, come to us after. We'll be hanging out in the lobby area. But what I want to do first is introduce everyone. First off, my name's John. I'm the head of creator strategy over at Kickstarter, and I'll let Andrew go first.
Hi, everyone. Hello. My name is Andrew Marks. I'm the director of product at Kickstarter, and I run the performance team. Before that, I worked in video game development, so I was a senior producer at Riot Games for a couple of years on Valorant, Legends of Runeterra. And for a fun fact for this room, I'm also the voice of Hermes and Sisyphus in the video game Hades.
I don't have anything that fun. I can't. Hi, I'm Suzanne Sheldon. I had a 20-plus year career in Fortune 50 advertising before I decided to save my soul and quit and work in the hobby that I love, which is tabletop gaming. I am the head of marketing, or the master of fireworks, for a company called Restoration Games. I've run campaigns on BackerKit. I think I was the first person to run a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, GameFound, and BackerKit's crowdfunding platform. I've run 5 multi-million-dollar campaigns over the last 5 years, and I've worked with all of these lovely people, and they're amazing.
They're all amazing. Hi, I'm Peavley. I'm the CEO of Roxley Games and founder of Off Duty Ninja. I haven't counted. The last time I counted was over 80 campaigns in my career that I've worked on, mostly on Kickstarter. That's growing because of the new platforms, of course. And lots of big ones, Terraforming Mars, Dice Throne, all the Roxley campaigns, of course, and having a lot of fun with it. Looking forward to being a part of this panel today.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Kyle Puller. I'm the founder and director of Pulling Power Media, a marketing company that focuses mostly on tabletop games. We've done, I think, over 120 crowdfunding campaigns, and now we're focused on both crowdfunding as well as web store and ongoing marketing for games. So that's what we've done.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you. So the first thing I want to do, and you all kind of touched on this a little bit, but was I want to see how you each got into the industry of like marketing and getting to your knowledge. And I know some people, for me it was a little bit out of necessity and just like curiosity, but I want to hear how everyone kind of got into that. And let's start with Kyle down there.
Sure. It's got a lot to do with the people on this panel. The first game we ever got involved with was with Andrew at a previous company way back in the day, Sensible Object, for a game called Beast of Balance. And then we found that to be a lot of fun, and it was a lot more, it was a lot better for the soul than working on corporate, so we tried to do more of it. And then our first crowdfunding campaign was alongside John and Andrew, which was Frosthaven, and of course we were chasing that high ever since. And so now it's like 90% of what we do, and yeah.
Kira?
Oh, wow. 10, 11 years ago, I worked at a marketing agency in Indianapolis, and one of the guys there was helping his friends start a board game company called Action Phase Games. And he said, it's got comic books and superheroes stuff, and I think you'd like it, and they know nothing about marketing. Can you help? And it became a passion. I ended up joining the industry full-time to help launch Colossal Games, then started Off Duty Ninja about 6 years ago. And this year I've gone into being a part of Roxley full-time, which is great. So that's how I got here.
Has Off Duty been 6 years?
I know, right?
That's amazing.
October. Wow. It's crazy.
That's so cool. So I've been a hobby gamer since probably before some of you were born. Excuse me. And then about a dozen years ago, I realized that all the board game media I was seeing was full of people that looked nothing like me and didn't really represent me, and I felt really unseen, and I wanted to make sure everybody out there that played games like I did felt like they had a voice and a face and a representation. So I started making content around board games about 12 years ago, 10 years ago. And so that's kind of how I broke into the industry, and then through that I made connections in the throughout the board gaming industry, and then people found out about my actual career, which was advertising and marketing, and ultimately I was recruited into the industry through that.
So the very first game I worked on actually raised the funds to hire me full-time through a Kickstarter campaign. So it does feel very First Silker to be up here and have that be the beginning, and hopefully not the end of my career, but certainly this nice middle bit that I'm in now. I think that a lot of marketing roles tend to be very multidisciplinary. There's a lot of people who come into those roles with a lot of different expertise. My initial skill set was in content creation, video editing. And then through posting a lot on, being a social media manager, started to get into the data and analytics side of things. And actually, when you combine data analytics content and then add a little bit of spend in there, suddenly you find yourself in the world of performance marketing. And that's the team that I run at Kickstarter now and have for a very long time with a lot of the folks on this panel as well. So of the top 5 campaigns on Kickstarter of all time, I personally ran the ads for 3 of them. And yeah, it's really interesting to sort of continually learn with every campaign under your belt. You start to get a better sense of heuristics, like what does great look like, what does good look like, and then you start to understand what are the things you can improve and learn, not just in an individual campaign, but across every campaign that you've worked on as well.
All right, so I want to ask a question to everyone here. Who here is a game creator? Like, who has a game that they're looking to market? Awesome. And then who here is someone who wants to get into marketing themselves, but not necessarily makes games? Okay, so it's a healthy mix. That's awesome. All right, great. So I'm going to ask someone on the panel, whoever wants to answer first. When it comes to tabletop, when someone says marketing, what does that mean? Not just paid ads, but what else does it encompass?
I mean, I'll throw my hat in. Yeah, I like to tell people a lot of marketing is really good storytelling, and it's telling a story from the right point to the right point for the person you're speaking to. So marketing is making sure you've got the right story, you're telling it to the right person at the right time, with a call to action that they can follow. So yeah, I mean, it's a broad spectrum across different disciplines, but really what you're doing is making people feel something. So that's what we try to do.
And where do you do that specifically, Suze? I know you have done a wide range of things when it comes to marketing. So what channels, what paths do you usually go after when you're...
To me, any channel that you're interacting with your customers is a channel that you are marketing in. So that includes all of your social media. There are owned channels, there are non-owned channels, there's paid channels, things like that. So yes, ads, placements, things like that, that is all marketing. Every sign that you see for a publisher in this hall right now, that's all marketing. But honestly, once you've gone into the public and you're representing a publisher or yourself as the product, everything that you say publicly is marketing. And every interaction that you have with a customer is marketing, even down to the customer service level. And I think that when you're really successful, especially for smaller businesses, if you go into that customer forward and messaging forward mindset, it really helps boost you from that perspective. But, crowdfunding, that is obviously a huge marketing channel. Social media, your website, your personal socials, unfortunately, in this kind of environment, all of that are channels that you're going to be marketing in.
And to jump on that as well, I think you have all of these different channels that you can use to communicate with your potential customers and your players and your active community. But I think the real thing that you need to aim for is coherence. And actually making sure that there is actually a coherent message, a coherent experience, because that is actually oftentimes what creates sort of someone who's interested in a product into an actual memorable relationship with you as a creator, whether you're selling your very first game or whether you're actually launching multiple products per year. It's consistency, it's trust, and it's faith that you're going to deliver against your players' expectations.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And Kira, at Roxley, one important thing that I'm sure you're considering a lot now is your budget. So how do you choose your budget? How do you choose the channels that, where your budget's being spent from day to day? I mean,
you get this question all the time. It's like, what should I spend? What is that cadence? And it's, when you're getting started, this is the hardest thing. And, through Off-Duty Ninja and through Roxley are two different things, right? Mm-hmm. We have a lot of people who are coming to us as first-time game designers at Off-Duty Ninja, or people trying to get started and get their game out there. Marketing budget's a lot smaller because it has to be. But generally speaking, I like to throw out, should be 10% of what you're raising, typically. Seems like a good number to use as an average, but ultimately is, what are we trying to do with this game, and how are we going to put what we need to into it to get it out there, and then looking at that number against what we are raising so that we keep the profit good for the company and can continue to make games, right?
And Andrew, when it comes to paid ads, how do you approach that when someone comes to you and goes, hey, I want to spend $50,000?
Yeah.
What's your answer there?
Well, it's really important to understand that in marketing, there's like fixed costs that you've spent it and that money is spent, and then there's variable costs or performance costs. One of the ways, at least to take a crowdfunding lens, it's a similar heuristic, right? Typically, performance marketing can contribute between 10 to 20% of the overall raise of a particular project. And the way that you set your budget based on that is, well, what kind of return on your ad dollar spent do you want to get? So to work back from some simple numbers, if you want to raise $100,000 on Kickstarter, well, ads could raise between $10,000 to $20,000 of that. Well, to figure out what your budget for that's going to be, well, call it a 3.33x return on ad spend. That means you spend $3,000 to get to your first 10,000, which is 10% of your overall raise. The other thing to consider is that you don't want to save all of that marketing budget for your live campaign. So critically is that spend and marketing activity that you do before your campaign in that pre-campaign phase to build awareness, to build up the confidence that when you hit go, your crowd, your community is going to turn up for you.
I think it's a really good point too, Andrew, because a lot of people are thinking about, well, I got to get ready for launch, and all my money is getting towards launch, and they're not thinking about pre-launch and the tail that you need for pre-launch, which is a lot longer. So you do have to consider your time as part of your marketing budget as well.
I mean, I consider the pre-launch, if you just in the lens of crowdfunding, campaigns are made, the success or failure of a campaign is made in the pre-launch period. The launch period is about how successful you can make it. But success, that's determined from before you go live. I try to drill that in.
Yeah.
I'd also, just based on what you were saying, and aside from the budget discussion, if you were saying, okay, I'm getting ready for launch, what I want to spend, you have missed a critical window for marketing. Your marketing should start months in advance of any kind of crowdfunding or any kind of a release activity. And depending on the size and the scale of your business, like you're like, oh, well, what if I have $50,000 to spend? And I mean, I know that there are a lot of publishers out there that'll be like, $50,000, holy crap. For smaller people, for people who are just starting out, I have seen, especially in the board game industry, because of the nature of games and because of the nature of social media, you can do so much work. You can get so much return for free, for no ad spend, but it does take that time investment. But it can help balance, and it's something critical, and that should be starting months and months in advance. So an example I have from PAX is that last night there was an event called the Night Market. And that was an expo, a Tokyo Game Market inspired expo that somebody organized that allowed 20 independent designers to bring their handmade games, 20 to 50 copies a piece, to sell them. He did no paid marketing. He did no advertising. What he started is he started talking about it in social spaces that shared common interests months ago and jumped in because they had to have a line queue management last night. And they stopped counting at like 500 people that came through for that. So start early and balance your budget with your time investment, for sure.
To that point too, it's a really good point, because marketing isn't always about spending money, and it is about spending time and building a community. So as an example, we didn't tell anybody we were gonna have a new game here at PAX for you to check out. It is in playtest mode still, and people are seeing it for the first time. What we found is that when you let people be a part of the experience early, so going to your local shows, going to your local game stores, and playing those prototypes with people starts to build a community that gets excited about your game and helps you with word-of-mouth marketing, which is critical when you're first starting out, and it continues to be critical throughout the entire process, no matter how big you get.
When I started out, I was scared shitless that I was going to put my game that was made of paper and whatever in front of people and have them tear it apart, but it's so important to just get it in front of people and keep going. So that goes into another question that, Kyle, I want to ask you is when you are approached by folks and they want to hire you, like where do you guide them from, hey, you should work with us, maybe you should hire someone internally, maybe you should just do it yourself? Like, how do you help them make that decision when you talk to folks?
Sure, so to contextualize that, this is what we do as an agency. We do performance marketing outside of crowdfunding. We support crowdfunding through Kickstarter, and we have a creative team that does animation, and we do web and a bunch of other things. I think the first question I ask is, what else are you doing, and what else have you done? And that's not to talk myself out of work, but all these activities are crucial. Any of them in isolation is almost a waste. I think you've got to think about your grassroots community and what you're doing for people when they walk in the door. You've got to think about your IRL presence and if people can see you, that's a trust builder. You've got to think about running ads. You've got to think about PR or earned media where speaking to people who might find it interesting, might cover you without you having to pay. And so when folks come to me and they say, we want to run ads, we've got a campaign, or we're doing a pre-release campaign, or a pre-order campaign, and they just want to run ads and they're not doing anything else, I usually say, you should meet Kira and you should chat to Kira about stuff at Off Duty Ninja. Or, I ask a few questions just to find out, because a lot of people think they've heard something about, these ads did really well for this campaign, and they start to see it as a silver bullet, and there's no silver bullet. The best campaigns I've ever run, I can't take all the credit for because the people running the campaign have done a lot of other work to create the conditions for success where our ads could kill it, or our creatives could shine, or there was a community. I mean, I do some work with Suzanne, and the Unmatched community is enormous and rabid and loud, and we share a piece of art that's animated for the first time, and it's everywhere. That doesn't happen if you don't have a community and you run an ad. It's just another moving picture on the internet. So I push a lot of creators back from working with us when I feel like they're of the belief that they can just do ads or they can just make a pretty picture and it's going to sell everything. So yeah, it's often a sense check in the beginning. Some people have it figured out and they already have a lot going for them, and they know what they need, and others have heard about ads and they think it's just pump money in, money comes out, and it's not really how it works.
Well,
If I
and
could-
you, when they, how often, just because I know it happens a lot, how often do you get a message in the middle of a campaign?
Yeah, that's the best. Hey, we've got 10 days left. We're hoping to run ads. Sorry.
So if you're waiting till the campaign is about to start or has started to make your plan, you've waited too long. So
Exactly.
when it comes to at least the advertising side of it, I would say you want to start at least 3 to 6 months ahead of time with what your plan is going to be. 3 months is pushing tight, wouldn't you say?
I mean,
Yeah.
so I've got this thing that they say, when should we launch? And sometimes I send them to John and say, he knows a lot more than I do about the cycle and when people are on the platform. But I don't like launch dates when people haven't done it before. I like launch following numbers because that hidden number that if you have a mark that you want to hit from a revenue perspective or from a sales perspective, then dates are not the launch criteria. Following and life signs are the launch criteria. So dates are helpful to force you to kind of get your act together, because if it's but yeah, that's something I push a lot for is, okay, what are the other markers we can create? Like, what are the benchmarks we can hit that we know, okay, we're ready for launch because we've done this and we've done that, and we've got the following and the conversations are hot. Now's a good time to launch. So.
Absolutely.
Do you have something?
I was just going to say, I think the biggest mistake that early creators or first-time creators make is to launch too early. I just really emphasize that point because, once you launch, and if you haven't got all your ducks in a row, it's live, it's happening, particularly in the context of crowdfunding when you've got that limited time window to really tell your story and engage with your potential backers. So. Yeah.
I actually have a question for the audience. Is again, show of hands, how many people here are really looking at crowdfunding as a path to producing? And how many people are looking at more direct or traditional methods to producing? Okay, great. So yeah, I think that's the other thing in terms of, I know we're talking a lot about crowdfunding, but I think a lot of the lessons that we're talking about here do also strongly apply to direct market, direct retail, whether it's talking about community building, whether it's looking at advertising. You can absolutely do ad spend and performance marketing around more traditional launches and things like that. So don't over-index on what we're saying about crowdfunding, because a lot of those lessons apply to direct.
And I would say that you can go as far as saying, and I like to explain to people, like with social content, if you're going to launch something, once you launch, you have to keep feeding the beast. You can't take a break when you run out of stuff. So make sure you have everything already and you're ahead of your calendar cycle. There's nothing worse than firing all your marketing ammunition in the first week and then you're scrambling to try keep feeding, and especially when things are going well. When things are going bad, maybe you've missed something in planning, but when things are going well and you can't keep feeding, you kind of lose the opportunity to ride the wave. And that's not crowdfunding specific, that's anything. Your name starts out there, have a plan, because it might do better and move faster than you expect, and then you're scrambling to keep up with it, and there's a million other things other than marketing that are going to be on your mind when that happens. So you want to kind of have that all put together.
So what are some, and I'd like to go down the line, starting with Andrew, what are some things or one thing that you think people can do on their own to kind of get ahead of the game before they even go to hiring an agency or go to hiring a full-time person? What's one thing that they can proactively do to like get ahead of the game and learn a little bit?
I think even before you're actively marketing or you have like a polished product to do, the first thing that you can do is get your game in front of people and start really thoughtfully gathering feedback about what makes your game unique, what really shines when you're demoing it, and also taking really close attention as to, well, maybe what are the pieces that make it less unique and maybe less interesting for the folks you're demoing to. Because then what you can really do is like having that very clearly articulated value proposition, to use a very marketing term, for your target audience and understanding actually within the hobby who you're trying to reach, that needs to be the foundation of all the channels that you pick from there on out. So being really product focused and being really audience focused before you've even spent $1 is probably the best and first thing to do.
Suze, what would yours be?
I'm always really terrible to work with because
That's not true.
most
No.
of the time, the first answer I have to any question like that is, let's take a big step back. I find a lot of people go into things without having goals defined or without having defined what they view as success. And I think that it's hard for you to set goals. I think it's hard for you to march forward and motivate yourself if you don't understand what you're marching towards. Is it just to get your game into the hands of people? Is it a certain dollar amount? Is it a certain minimum print run? What does success look like to you, and how do you achieve that? And then very much along what Andrew was saying, defining who you're talking to and understanding where you are strong and where you are weak, and then understanding how you lean into your strengths, whether you're great on social, you've built up a huge community on Instagram, or you don't have a place where people can talk to you directly, like a Discord or things like that, or you don't have a website, whatever it is, right? Lay those out, understand what they are, and understand that just because you're weak in these spots doesn't mean that they're not important. You need to know that, and then you can start figuring out how do you fill in those gaps. If you don't understand that very early on, you're just kind of throwing yourself into the wind, and I think it leads to a lot of downstream frustration.
Yeah. Agree with everything that Andrew and Susan just said, but I would say one of the things that I really recommend, especially because a lot of times it's a game designer. I'm a game designer, I want to do something, I'm all by myself. I'm not a part of a publisher. The people that playtest my games are my friends, my immediate game group. Make a sell sheet. Sell sheet has a description of the game, has your key 3 features. Most of us are introverts, even though we all play games, which is a very social thing. There's a lot of us out here, I'm one of them. So having basically a pre-written script that you can reference is going to really help you when you're starting to play that game. And that's the other thing, outside of your comfort zone, because you're not going to get that critical feedback you need to get the product to the right place to even start the marketing process. So that sell sheet is like the very first piece of marketing for yourself to help you move forward when you're telling people about the game.
Yeah, I'm to add to everyone, I think the thing that I'm going to talk about is the one thing we don't do a lot of on our side, and we always push people to do internally. And it's not because I'm anti-marketing myself here, but it's community. I think very often big companies come to us so that we can help them present as smaller, approachable companies. And by the same token, on the other side of the fence, I've got small one-man bands coming in and asking, how can we present this super big? And so, you know how much money they're spending to appear approachable? You are approachable. And so understanding the strength of that, and I think also, don't be afraid to start grassroots. Your friends, everyone wants to start with like ads, and I'm like, but you haven't even got 12 people on the page. You know more than 12 people. Where's your inner circle? Start with your inner circle. They set the tone for your community. They set the tone for how things start. Definitely start there. I think another thing, and this is a little bit linked to what Sue said, is understanding your timeline and defining success. I think a lot of people are focused on that revenue number. They're focused on how much money they can raise. And I always ask, is this your only game? You're going to make one game and you're done? Then sure, maybe that's the number you look at. If you're looking to build a 20-year career in a company, or you want to do this again and again and again, that number becomes not irrelevant, but a little less important. And once again, back to community, if you're crowdfunding or you're launching something, getting it in people's hands, getting people talking about it, getting that community to center around it in a Discord or in a page or even just in IRL, there's that's the most important play. And that's, when we run ads, that's the difference. I can tell when there's a community in place, or if there's something being paid attention to, or if it's just a product and we're shipping a product to people, which is fine. Some people do that and it works for some people. It never works as well as the people who have a community, in my opinion. So, yeah.
I wanted to dig in a little bit to paid advertising. And Andrew, I know that there's a ton of different forms of paid advertising. I'm sure you and I could talk about this, or all of us could talk about this for 5 hours. But could you briefly go over the top areas of paid advertising when it comes to Facebook and Google, and like where you see those sitting?
Yeah,
priority?
I mean, I think channel selection is always a function of budget and your own expertise. I think that for entertainment products, it's really important to lean into the visual identity, and that's why I would normally suggest paid social. And paid social is a very broad window. We know the usual suspects. It's Facebook. It's the Facebook Meta product range. I've seen some good results with Reddit as well. There's a lot of like active tabletop communities in there. If you're a little bit more sophisticated and you're actually looking to go, with a higher lift, and especially, I'd suggest like Google channels have a range of much more detailed and like optimizable like tactics you can utilize across search, across display, across YouTube. But really, if you're looking for 2 key channels to really make sure you're gathering the most data and the insights and leveraging all of the cool visual identity that you've built for your product, paid social, Facebook, and then Google search would be is typically the foundation of any campaign.
I also don't like to think of the channels completely separate. It's really important to understand that your channels they have a relationship to each other. So the good thing that Andrew mentioned, he talked about Meta and he talked about Google. Google products, a lot of them are search focused. So you're capturing existing intent, and a lot of them you're reaching a lot of people. Think of it as, I'm sure some people here are familiar with a funnel, but one is telling someone something and making them want it, and the other one is capturing people who do want something. And one sometimes looks a lot better than the other, but you turn off the one that doesn't look good, and the one that looks good starts to diminish. So those 2 channels work really well. There's a good relationship between those in our space, in our tabletop community, and of course, there's a place for all the other ones as well. They kind of feed the system. So yeah, don't draw lines between them that are super hard.
I think the other way to think about it is, if things are going well, you have an opportunity to expand and continue to add more channels into the mix. Not every channel is what we call a direct response channel, which means someone sees an ad and then directly purchases from that. If you've got the right ROAS, or return on ad spends, there's a lot of acronyms in this industry, so I'll try to spell them out. If you've got a healthy mix there and things are profitable, you have the ability to mix in new channels that maybe are less direct response, but are building, as Kyle says, that top of that funnel, that awareness in your target audience.
And Suze, as a publisher, how do you look at those choices? Do you just go, Kyle, do whatever you want? Or do you get on a call and how do you go through that?
I will tell you, I definitely ever say that.
Yeah, no.
No, I think I think there are some really good general rules, and I think Andrew covered off on that really, really well. But ultimately, where your money is best spent really depends on you understanding what you're selling and who you want to sell it to and how you reach those people. So for us, restoration we're significant enough, we're large enough now that we have a significant budget and that we can kind of go a little broader spectrum, right? But so when we are looking at that though, we will, like Facebook's a must. Personally, I find Reddit a little overpriced for my return. Maybe it's just my publisher. Maybe it's just the products that we have, and it's not a fit. And I know that, so I won't lean into that. I always start with Facebook, and then we expand from there. We do Google as well. But it's really about how you identify your audiences. That's stuff that we're not really talking about. Like Kyle brings up the funnel, and if you don't know the funnel, right, it's just a very simple thing. It's like you pour in leads, potentials, consumers, audiences into the top, right? And then it slowly winnows down to the people who will actually purchase your product at the end. And we talk about conversion rates through the funnel and where people are in terms of awareness and interest and things like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And honestly, all of this stuff is pretty simplified on the internet if you just start Googling things like the sales funnel and things like that. And I actually encourage it because it's really solid, basic information to understand. But we will do, when you start looking at ads, not only are we looking at the platform, but we're looking at the message and the visuals and who we're targeting. So we want that big funnel because conversion rate goes down. And it's like, if I have 10,000 followers on a Kickstarter, I can expect, depending on what the campaign is and things like that, maybe a 15 to 30% conversion rate. For context, when I'm looking at, like my former clients include people like Volkswagen of America, Microsoft Surface, Xbox, things like that, they would look at conversion rates of like 3%. Like the variability in gaming to other industries is really high. But going back to the point is like when I'm looking at what platforms, it's not just what platforms, it's what messaging that I want on that platform and how I segment that audience. So for example, if I run a campaign about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles board game, I actually want to hit Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans, and I want to hit 80s pop culture fans. And they may not know anything about board games, but I want to be talking to them, and I want to be putting visuals, and I don't want to be talking about, it's simplified rules with, card-driven tactical gameplay using simple line-of-sight rules. Like, what the hell does that mean to anybody there, right? I want to show sexy turtles and talk about, like, I commissioned a very expensive piece of Kevin Eastman art to put into this game to those people, right? So then we send them that message. Meanwhile, we've got all these great board game Facebook groups and things like that. I'm putting a different ad in front of them. That's where I'm talking about the rules. That's where I'm talking about how it integrates and the expandability and things like that. So it's not just platform, it's knowing your audience, where they are, and how you message to them.
Right message, right place, right time.
Right.
And Kira, as somebody who's done both consulting and now you're in publishing as well, now is that, like when you, outside of paid ads, what else do you look at? Reviews, previews? Like how do you prioritize those budget-wise when it comes to a campaign or a release or anything like that?
I almost want to go back a little bit before that piece, because one of the things that a lot of people do is they're like, you were saying this earlier about they're looking at a number, you're looking at a follower count, you're doing all these things. What does it cost to make the game? Do you know?
Yeah.
Or are you just deciding? Do you know what the game is going to be that you want to make? Do you know what if you're doing crowdfunding, what the crowdfunding version looks like versus what the retail version looks like? And how many do you need to sell in order to hit the number, to hit the print run, to get the cost where you want it? And then that's when you set the budget, that's when you determine things. But when it comes to media, so we'll skip back forward, I just want to make sure I said that. When I start looking at that and how I set the budget for that, it's, with Roxley especially, it's about who's the right fit for the game. And going back a little bit to Off-Duty Ninja, when I first entered the industry, I started building relationships with media at Colossal Games to get this exact same thing, where who even likes our games? We were a brand new publisher. And so will they like a two-player game? Will they like a John Cloudis game versus a Travis Chance game? Things like that. Who are those people? And that database is being built for over 7, 8 years now. And now we can go in and I can look and I go, okay, I've got a new party game coming out that plays in 20 minutes, but it's got some strategy, it's got some deduction. I know it's got a little take that, so I can't send it to Rado. He hates doing that because in his videos he plays with his wife and he doesn't want to be mean to his wife. That is a specific thing. You learn that over time. And that's why it's nice to have somebody that has that experience, but ultimately you can do that just by going, who are the content creators I like? And based on the games they play, do they like my game? So then I look at that and I go, well, what is their cost? And then I look at it against my budget and I choose those people based off that. If they're interested too, and I reach out and say, are you interested? Here's the game, here's what we're looking to do. I know you have your, I'm kind of weird because I hate doing like the standard previews because they're just so boring to me. They're the most boringest videos on the planet. What can you do that's different, that is going to stand out from everybody else? Because I don't want 6 of the same exact video coming out, right? So then if we all align, then that's what sets the content creator budget for us, ultimately, is that it's the right people to give the message that we're looking for.
So what you just said, kind of like basically you don't want to blend in.
Correct.
And earlier, Kyle, you mentioned you don't want to be another moving picture on the internet.
Yeah.
Which I think that's okay. I like moving pictures on the internet.
Well, we make a lot of them, so.
Yeah, but that brings us to creative, and how do you utilize creative to set yourself apart, whether it comes from ads? I mean, the cover of your game is marketing, like that sells your game because that's everywhere, but when it comes to creative in the form of marketing, like how do you approach that?
Well, there's a guy in the crowd who's my creative director somewhere. And so I have to be careful about what I say now. I don't say anything wrong. But just to dial back a little bit, because there's something that triggered me, and triggered a thought for me. Not everyone in this room is making a game. We saw a show of hands, and not everyone in this room is looking to market So there's a lot of people in this room that are on the tabletop space, and they're not launching a game, and they're not looking to market. And so they're probably someone like me who is very entrenched in this industry, and they're looking to figure out how to market something other than a game. Maybe it's a service, maybe it's something else. And so a lot of our stuff is game-focused, and I just wanted to touch on a few things that have been mentioned lightly, more in the context of games that might be more useful to other things, whether you're offering a different service or because it's tabletop marketing, not necessarily tabletop game marketing. And a big part of that, and that was kind of something that Kira said, was a big part of marketing for us is we don't run ads for our company because we're an ads company. We're not doing, okay, we do tons of creative of ourselves, but relationships is a huge thing. And taking the time to know who you're speaking to and show up. I mean, myself and my creative director are here from South Africa, and we were here last year, and we went to Gamma, and we're showing up at all the IRL events because relationships is the marketing. This is a community-driven.
IRL is in real life, for those of you that don't know that acronym.
It's not a marketing term. Yeah, so we're showing up, and I think Sue said it. Every little piece you're seeing, every interaction, every customer servicing, that's all marketing. It's all part of marketing. And so taking the time to be here and to show up and to remember who you speak to and not just sell, that's super important. And to realize that this is a space that you put in and you get out. You don't just come in, collect, and go home. That's an important thing for people who are making games and who aren't making games. And I completely forgot the question, John, so can you?
Oh, that's okay.
Creative. That was a great answer.
It's creative, yeah.
So we're going to do Q&A shortly, but there's going to be 2 mics here. So if everyone wants to line up now, that's okay. If you want to if you have a question, but if you don't, that's okay.
Don't everybody get up all at once.
I have one more question for the panelists, but while everyone's moving. Are there any real-world examples of marketing that you've seen in the past few years that it's stuck in your brain and it's still stuck in your brain?
Me? Oh, God, I could say every day.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something now off the cuff. I think you'd ask me about creative. I would say just before, I'm terrible. Guys, I'm ADD. Bear with me. I'm getting there. On the creative question, I would say creative is a very emotional thing. It's about speaking to people and making them feel things, but the deployment of creative is driven by data for us, and so making sure that we're smart about how we are guiding creative and who we're serving it to, and that's why a feedback loop between people who run performance ads and people who make pretty pictures is really important, because you're always excited about something you've made, and people might be excited about a different part of it. So that's the thing on creative, is always try to learn from the data. When it comes to things I've seen in the real world, recently?
Yeah.
I've got one.
Save me.
If you want to get a master class in a coherent brand, there's this amazing direct-to-consumer crocheting business called The Woobles.
Yes.
I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've
Who here has seen an ad from the Woobles? Raise your hand.
The Woobles.
Yeah, everyone. Okay, great.
It's not just the ads that are great. It's not just the products that are great. It's that every single touch point you have with that brand fosters the same kind of cute, feeling, warm, welcoming tone. I'm very inspired by their work, and I think they do an incredible job.
Yeah.
Anyone else got something, or we want to go to
Yeah,
questions?
I can jump
You
in.
got-
So one of the things, it's two related things really, is that, I pushed this a lot at Off Duty Ninja in my old career, my old agency before I came into board games, is engagement. So companies are doing really good with engagement out there on the social media channels. I use TikTok as an example. Windows follows one person on TikTok, and it has become like the craziest thing that people talk about. She's a very straight-faced person. She sits there, she goes, TikTok, only one person follows me, and it's Windows, and they just sent me a new Xbox. And that's how she talks, and it's great. But the thing is, if you go out on these channels and you're watching some of the most popular videos and things that are trending, those big brands are out there taking the time to go engage in the comments with people, engage with those creators, create that community. And that, from a marketing perspective, stands out to me because, wow, did Uber Eats just comment on that guy's video about food, right? It's good marketing for them, though, right? So I think those are some new tactics that people aren't looking at. It's not just about the ads anymore, it's about the engagement.
Yeah. Like Wendy's snarky comments
Yeah.
in every post.
Wendy's Twitter, if you haven't.
Wendy's is so
One of the
snarky.
few things on Twitter that
All right,
I
let's
will...
go to the right side here. You go first. How about it?
Hi, y'all. I'm Kosi. I'm from New York City. I'm a grad student in management and design. and I'm working on my thesis, which is a tabletop role-playing game that I would like to eventually, put it in real people's hands and not just my professors. But there's I've noticed in the space, it's very sort of creator-driven in the sense that personal, important names really drive certain products. For people who don't have that sort of brand recognition in terms of their personal brand, how do you advise sort of, cutting through this kind of noisy space?
So what's a good starting point for someone that just doesn't have that foundation already, basically? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to say brand, because the example I was thinking about creative was Jaguar recently rebranded, and rebrands are always really interesting to me. And being a branding specialist is something that I used to do in my previous life, and it is a huge thing. And Andrew was touching on a little bit in the brand consistency when you're talking about Woobles, and I think it's one of the most important things today, because we're working in a space that is growing and is very noisy, and it's full of people who are creating great products, but they don't necessarily understand the bigger picture of making a product to get into people's hands. And so all that is just context for what you're talking about, is how do I become somebody in a space where I'm currently not a known entity? And in the age of social media, I think there are a lot of people who are highly successful and visible because they got lucky. I mean, I'm just gonna be really honest. And that's the reality. What I would encourage you to do is think about who you are as a creator and what the game is that you're making. And then what brand does that feel? Because a brand is a lot of entities. It's not just a logo. And hey, random piece of advice, please do not name your publishing company after your first game.
Do your last name like I did.
Just please do not name your company after your game. It's a terrible idea. And plot out a plan and engage in the community, because ultimately that's what it comes down to, is finding the people that you connect with, not that can use you or that you can use, but people that connect with, people who enjoy your product. Understand how you can reach out to them, engage with them organically, start talking to them, start sharing their things, start sharing your things, start soliciting. One of the greatest things about the tabletop industry is that it is full of people who are incredibly generous with their time, right? And in general, people do want to lift each other up. Absolutely. But you can't look at this as like saying what we've been going. You can't be like, oh, I want to try to publish my game in 2 months, and I got to be ready to go. You really do need to look at it as like a longer term investment, and think about making sure that whenever you are talking to people, that you are very clear on who you are and what you're talking about, and be consistent. Don't muddy it with oh, let's talk about pizza here under this discussion about, the die rolling mechanisms or things like that. Make sure that when you're presenting yourself that you're always leaning into that. Create a logo or create a photo or something like that is consistent across the board, no matter where you're talking to people, so that when they see you, if they see you, they can start making those links. One of the really common things in advertising, and we can talk about whether or not it's really true anymore, is that you need at least 3 touches to a person to get them to engage in your content. So Kyle right now and his team is working on a video for us that we're calling Top of Funnel, going back to that beautiful funnel. We expect nobody to click on this ad. I'm spending a lot of money, Kyle, on a video that I don't expect people to interact with. But what I do want them to do is see it. I want them to see the game. I want them to see the Unmatched brand. That is your first touch. And then the next time they see the Unmatched brand, what they are going to see is a more targeted ad, but the branding and the presentation and the product is going to be the same. And that's what I encourage you to do. And that's very high corporate bullshit, but from a very personal level, from somebody who's creating a very passion project, the same principles do apply to you. Identify who you are, identify who the game is, and who wants it and who you can reach out to, and then be very, very consistent in that presentation. And if you can, go bold. Do something eye-catching, do something interesting. Do not, think about all the game names, think about all the publisher names out there, and what a lot of them, 50% of them have something in common, and it gets very hard to distinguish. So that's why you're starting to see things like Sea Cow Publishing. And
Animal acronym?
Yeah,
games.
so think about that as well. It's a tough challenge, But that's what I would recommend from just that point of view.
And to add on to that, I would say a lot of people go, I'm going to go do it all at once. That's a lot, and you'll burn yourself out. So start with one channel. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So if you're trying to build a brand for yourself, start in the channel that you're already on, that you're most comfortable. If you're an Instagram person, cool. I'm going to start sharing stories. I'm going to start sharing reels. I'm going to share pictures of my behind the scenes, what I'm doing with my professor, all of these things. And then once you're comfortable there, then maybe try Blue Sky next. That's a growing tabletop community right now, so that's a great one.
A ton of opportunity on Blue Sky. for
Tons of
tabletop
opportunity to
people.
get in
a ton
early
right now because you're early.
on Blue Sky and things like that. So don't feel like you have to go, I got to be TikTok, YouTube, this, that, the other thing. I got to start a blog. No. Start with where you're comfortable and grow when you're ready. If you're trying to do it as a sprint, you're not going to be successful unless you're lucky.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Over here. And we got 15 minutes, so we'll try to
Faster, sorry.
1 or 2 minutes a question now. Go for it.
Yeah, so I'm from the group that's trying to get into marketing in the board gaming industry and just really struggling. Like, I have a corporate background, and I am just not being recognized when I apply for everything. You know, putting a lot of heart and effort and soul into these applications, not getting any callbacks or anything. So basically my question is, with most of you coming from a corporate background, some technically in it right now, what is the transition that you made to get recognized by the gaming industry as somebody with corporate background?
In what field are you trying to apply to?
So I'm marketing and event management, but because of times, having a family, I had to go the banking route. I had to lose my soul for a long time. So processing mortgages, things like that. But my education is in entertainment marketing.
Cool.
And I have internship experience with that and management, but nothing professional. And so I'm trying to break into that right now.
The biggest advice that I give to, especially like developing designers or people who really want to get into the tabletop space, is to actually figure out what are small projects that you can do on your own time and actually finish. Because I think one of the hardest things in game development is the thing that we get to do the least number of times, which is taking a project from beginning to end and completing it.
Sure.
And particularly if you're looking for applications and people are reviewing your pieces, like showing that you have a presence and that you are engaging with the industry and in different disciplines that are supportive of that, and being able to scope small. Like, don't start your dream project as your first project. Figure out what's a small scope thing, constrain yourself with components, make it a deck of cards, half a deck of cards, figure out what you can do there, because then you are going to get better at all of the things that happen at the beginning, middle, and end of a project. And showing that you've done that enough times and over time is hugely credible for any designer or any hiring manager looking in a game field.
15-second add-on. From the marketing perspective, join the Tabletop Games Jobs group on Facebook. You're already there, but talk. Ask these questions in there. Engage with the community. Make sure people know who you are and what you do, because the people who are looking for people are also looking in that group. So take the time to be a part of that group, not just a watcher, and you'll find some success there. But yeah, it is a little bit difficult, especially if you don't have tabletop marketing experience, because as a marketer, what we've found is that you can have a great marketing background, but you really don't understand marketing tabletop, or you can really understand tabletop, but you don't understand marketing. And finding that blend and proving to people that you understand that is important. So being in the community helps people know that you understand the market.
I want to jump in just quickly because I can relate to where you're at right now. I was outside of this industry. My whole company are filled with people who love tabletop, and yet we were marketing corporates, and we were dying to get a chance. And when we got our first game, we stopped everything because we thought if we do a great job here, this can be repeatable. And while that's true, what really was the difference for us is key people who made introductions. And the part of that we needed to do was make sure that we did the best work possible for those people when we got the chance, and keep showing up, flying 16 hours to events, go to industry events as well. PAX is a big event, and it's a big B2C event, lots of people buying games here. There are events that are more geared towards industry professionals networking and meeting, like Gamma and a few others. And then there's also really good people. If you like, the people on this panel are good people to know. I can promise you, for me, every single person on this panel, someone has introduced me to someone, or someone who I work with, or someone who's opened doors. The two people on the end of that panel, and I mean everyone. I've done, there's basically basically the door was held open for us to enter the industry, and I would love to kind of make sure that people know that there's a lot of people here that are welcoming, and there's too much work in that space for the few of us to do, and so there's a lot of space for more people to do
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
All right, we're going to keep moving. Just real quick.
appreciate
It took me 6 years to get a job in this industry. I spent a long time not making money, so sometimes it takes a lot. I promise you.
I was lucky. I knew somebody who needed me, and they
Yeah.
asked me.
Yeah. All right, over here. Now we're going to go down to 1 minute a question.
All right, 1
Maybe a
minute.
little
All
more.
right,
Go.
my name's Doug. I run a small company called Smidgen Games. I just started it. Our debut game was going to hit Kickstarter, but after playtesting it with a bunch of publishers here, they said it's ready for retail. A little nervous for that. How do we, as individuals going right to retail, talk to Target, Barnes & Noble without going through the Kickstarter route?
Jesus.
Do you have a distributor partner yet?
We were thinking maybe either Panda or What's Game.
With who?
What's Games?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's your manufacturer.
Oh, we would be publishing it, yeah.
Maybe come to us after. We'll talk, because that's a
Yeah,
long
let's talk a little bit more about it.
But,
yeah.
but big box, it's going to be virtually impossible for you to pitch to big box independently. So
Unless you have
we'll need to
somebody-
talk about
Yeah.
industry groups that you would have to work through.
Okay.
If
cool.
you want
Yeah.
that.
I'll talk to you guys. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Over here.
Hello, I work on a immersive video chat meets virtual tabletop software, so a little bit more iterative than kind of like launching a big Kickstarter and as a software project. And it's early, and I'm kind of like trying to, since the pandemic, it's become sort of a bit more of a crowded niche, the virtual tabletop space. So I'm curious to hear your kind of advice on how to discover, how to like enter a crowded niche and position yourself amongst a crowded niche market, as in tabletop space, especially as I have the affordance to be iterative and learn about it.
So in the past, I had a lot of experience working with software developers and producers and marketing those things. And I think that there are challenges, but there are advantages as well. And one of those things is that your cost to produce a single item is cheap. And so along with what Andrew was saying much earlier on, you must understand how your product is different and what it gives to the people who can use it. And you need to finally hone that message. And then you need to invest in yourself. So find some of those people that are connected, that you think can benefit from your product, reach out to them, ask them to look at it. Asking for people for time is really, really difficult because none of us have a lot of time. But especially with a software product, getting it into their hands, try this, let me know, I'll give you a 6-month license for free, things like that, is probably the simplest path, especially since you don't have a production cost related. But as with any product, you're talking about I'm going into a crowded market. This is a crowded market. If you do not understand your value prop and how you reach the people that are interested in that, that's the number one priority.
To add on briefly, it's really two words. It's differentiation, and then it's prioritization. Really making sure that you're focusing on the biggest opportunities in front of you rather than getting distracted and going too broad.
Yes,
Absolutely.
great point.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
One of the things that's been touched on a lot during these conversations is finding who's the right fit for a game. So I was curious, to what extent does kind of more formal consumer research or just trying to do broader things fit into all of these things before play testing or, before analytics and stuff like that?
So we do quite a lot of testing, A/B testing, and there's a lot of things you can do. We've done testing for straplines on games, covers for games, audiences, with small-ish budgets, not so small that the results are anecdotal. You can find out who's responding early on. You can also do qualitative focus groups with people and find out what the feedback is like. But I find if there is a budget behind it, before you go live, sometimes measuring twice before you cut can save you a lot of cost down the line. And so something as simple as sign up with your email address if you're interested in this game, present the game to one audience, present the game to another audience, finding out at that point who is signing up to know more can tell you a lot about, okay, we've spent this much. When we go live on our Kickstarter, let's not weight the budget towards the audience that's maybe not going to respond. So testing is useful. Control testing needs to be done carefully. You can't change all the variables, one variable, right? So if you're same creative over the same period, then you can change the audience. If you're doing the same audience, you want to find out which box cover or which art or which strapline, then that's the only thing that can change. So testing is really useful, and if you want to know more about that, I can speak up on it later. Otherwise, anyone else?
I would also suggest that there are micro interactions that you have, especially like you're here at PAX, so you're at an event. These are events, both smaller local events that are much more affordable and easier to get to, but also these larger events are opportunities to have micro interactions with potential audience members. And boy, that sounded really jargony, sorry. Basically, throw down a table, have a 1-question survey, have some candy and cookies on the table. Hey, answer this one question, have a cookie, right? And it's like, maybe that question is, here's the title of the game, who do you think wants to play this game? Or, here's the title of the game, would you want to play this game? How old are you and what's your gender, right? Things like that. You can have those very quick things. You can get a lot of, it's not quite anecdata, it actually has value. So think about that as a grassroots attempt too.
One tiny detail I'd add as well, I think when you're looking at like larger data sets or demographic data, they can be really like, distracting. I think really honing in on the emotional response and the emotional messaging and making sure that is like, is resonant. If you go too broad or you go too big or you say, hey, it's X% this or X% that, you're gonna lose the detail of the product there.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey there. I'm curious, obviously Kickstarter is the best, but what are some of the pros and cons of various crowdfunding platforms, or why might a product succeed on one versus another, or why would you go?
Oh, I can answer
I love this
one.
question.
I can answer.
I love this question.
I could do an entire panel on that.
So we absolutely could. I think we could probably talk for
I mean, I can sum it up
days.
pretty quickly. I mean, Kickstarter is the biggest audience, and you typically get the most money. So that's what I tell a lot of
But it's
people.
also the most crowded.
It is the biggest United States audience. If you're
Yep.
looking and you have a product that you think will perform better in
Yep.
Europe, you really do want to consider GameFound. Now, I will tell you, right, because of how they do VAT handling, now I understand that Kickstarter is going to improve
don't
their
worry.
offering there.
We're on it,
Hey,
Mark.
we'll dig into it, buddy.
Kickstarter.
Again, with respect, I have run campaigns on Kickstarter, GameFound, and BackerKit's crowdfunder campaign, and I'm happy to have this conversation with you because it depends on who you are, how big you are, and very specifically what type of game you are. I spend hours and hours researching this, and I'd be happy to talk with you.
Yeah.
I'll also just jump in a little because I'm a bit more impartial than that side of the table over there. I've run a lot of campaigns across all the platforms. We've done some of the biggest BackerKit campaigns, we've done GameFound campaigns, and we've done a lot of Kickstarter campaigns. I would say for creators, if you're looking to find a community, there's an answer to that question, and that's Kickstarter. There's a crowd. You need a crowd to crowdfund. I think the biggest crowd is in one place. I think if you have a crowd, you have a bit more option on where you can find success. I think, looking at the campaigns we've run, we've seen little variance in large creators jumping because they're bringing an existing community, and you never understand the opportunity cost. If you have success somewhere, you don't know how much you would have had somewhere else. But yeah, I think we've seen a lot more of an organic component to Kickstarter than we found on the other platforms. Obviously, GameFound is more game-focused. BackerKit is going broad. Kickstarter is broad, but has a large established games audience. So it's about where you are in what stage, and the options change and what you're trying to achieve. But from our side, aggregated, Kickstarter is probably the easiest for us to find success on, based on just the fact that there's a large organic audience. That's
We got 3 minutes.
Could I just add one quick thought to that as well, which is when you think about Kickstarter, this is a hobby that's growing and growing and growing, and everyone every day is playing their first game and really finding their way to tabletop. You don't want to add a lot of friction in terms of the brand awareness of Kickstarter versus another platform. So a lot of that, as I think Suze is very right, you need to be thoughtful about your project and where you're trying to reach your people, but Kickstarter reduces a lot of that friction on the platform because it's typically something that it's a product that people have heard of and are often pretty excited to pledge. So. Yeah.
I do think some of the folks at BackerKit are pretty cool, though.
Absolutely.
I like everybody here.
All right, awesome. Go ahead.
Hello. What is it? I'm working on prototyping, and I was planning to kickstart a board game, like go the crowdfunding route. My problem is that as a young adult, I'm unable to form a corporate entity. How much would that affect me in terms of like advertising and being able to start a Kickstarter?
You need a company.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you can do it as an individual, but like you'll still need to file taxes and all of that stuff. But if you want details, come see me after.
Got it,
I can
okay.
break that down for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go for it.
One of the things that you had brought up was you're kind of telling a narrative when you're marketing. You want to have like this quick, punchy story and things like that. You also want to start marketing early, right? I think the number you gave was like maybe 3 to 6 months or something like that. That is a long time for things to change. So I guess, how do you do this marketing and tell this compelling narrative, but also give yourself enough room that if you have to change, like you didn't accidentally subvert expectations or something like that?
I think that's an opportunity, because if you do it right, you can actually make those decisions and do that with your community and bring them along for that as well. You never want to just sort of say this is the thing and have no means of changing it. And if you spin it right, if you talk with your community, make them part of that decision-making process, they're going to be more invested in your project.
Also, that 3 to 6 months is a ramp. It's not, you don't switch it on and go blast 6 months before. You build up towards something and you find the height of the conversation right before a campaign or a launch or a release. So you don't want to be, you don't want it to dip down before a launch, right? So you have time to make adaptations to your messaging should things macroeconomic or stuff in the environment or the community change.
Cool, and we are at time, so we'll hang out, or at least I'll hang out, and a couple of us will hang out in the hallway if you want to ask us questions in particular. But thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
It means a lot. Thank you everyone on the panel.